Good afternoon. We're going to try to give you a little primer today on some of the legal issues and a little legal update in terms of how I perceive things. And Jeff is right. I've been really closely involved in ACAM for now about 5 or 6 years, but the first meeting of ACAM I came to was about 30 years ago. And I came to one in Los Angeles, so I've been around a long time. And I guess that's just because I'm a little bit older than some of you folks around here. But I'm a lawyer, and I operate out of Chicago. And my background is such that for a number of years I was the chief attorney prosecuting and regulating doctors in the state of Illinois from 74 to 79. And during that time frame, I educated and worked with licensing lawyers and licensing investigators around the country to try to teach them how to do the regulation. I've since gone, obviously, many years ago, but what I've managed to do is keep track of what's going on around the country. And so what we've tried to do as a group, we now have 4 of us who work as general counsel for ACAM. Myself, Alan Dumoff, who's out of Maryland, and Alan does a lot of work specifically with doing audits of practices and trying to do a lot of the detail things. And then Rick Jaffe, who's a lawyer out of Texas, who works with a lot of people on criminal matters and other things. And then Jacques Simon does a lot of heavy litigation out of New York. And I'm in Chicago, and I do a little bit of everything. And so what we've tried to do is come to ACAM as a group to say, how can we help to educate the doctors and other people involved with ACAM who want to practice this way, and how to stay out of trouble and things that they should be paying attention to. Because we all know that there are some concerns, and you've got to be careful. It doesn't mean you have to run away and hide. It doesn't mean you have to not do what you believe in, but you have to be careful and you have to watch it. And you have to watch it in a different way than regular practitioners need to watch it. So today we're going to talk briefly about a few areas here, chelation and some state rules. And I use chelation as an example because I think it's the simplest way to go through it today. For any of you who want to get into more depth on some of these things, about 3 years ago for ACAM, we put on a whole day session dealing with different aspects of law and record keeping and informed consents and patient relations and a whole variety of things like that. We're going to have a sunset session, I should be able to say that easier, on Saturday night, and I know we're going to talk for about an hour and a half and much longer than some of the issues than we are here today, if any of you decide you want to come along and listen. I do this personally, just so you know, because I've been working for years as a doctor, as a lawyer, working with doctors, and before regulating them and now working and protecting them for 30-some years. But I happen to be a personal believer in a lot of the things that ACAM does, and a lot of people don't. It doesn't mean they're good or bad, but I've had many chelation treatments. I've been taking supplements for many years. I've been working with doctors a long time. In 1980, the state of Illinois tried to close one of my clients, who was called Cancer Treatment Centers of America, one of their hospitals, and I'm now on the board of one of their hospitals and have been for 20 years. But they tried to close them down because they were doing audacious things like saying you should be eating fresh fruit and vegetables rather than canned fruit and vegetables. And they said that we were committing fraud. They said that, what difference does it make if a doctor smokes in the hospital? Come on, folks. And they brought me in, and I mean, they literally revoked the hospital's license the way it worked in Illinois, and then they say, now we're going to give you a hearing. So they don't stop the hospital from working, but it's just the way the process worked. It took about 4 or 5 months, and we had the case dropped completely, but it was that silly back in 1980. Now, that's 30 years ago, and one of the messages today is that we've come a long way in 25 or 30 years. 30 years ago, when I was a regulator and looking at doctors and looking at issues like chelation, there were a lot of people who just said, if you do chelation, you're terrible, you're defrauding people, you should be out of business, and that was their position. I, as a regulator, wasn't so sure about that, so I didn't go after any doctors because I just wasn't sure that there was anything wrong with it, and the case didn't come to me that I felt I should do something. But now, 25, 30 years later, it's a lot better. That's one clear message. It's a lot better than it was. It's not perfect, and there's still a lot of issues that you've got to pay attention to, but we're a lot better. And that's one of the things that you should really know. I had the joy yesterday of taking the deposition of a well-known quackbuster named Dr. Baratz, and in Boston, which is a long story why I'm a little tired today. I was traveling all night, basically, to get back out here. But even he, when it got to chelation, had to admit that with the proper informed consents, that he, and with not false promises, that he couldn't really say you couldn't be doing it. Where I guarantee you 30 years ago he would say, no matter what, that's a no-no. So we even had some areas of agreement. Obviously we had many areas of disagreement. Oops, let me just see where we are here. So let's talk a little bit, and I think we were just talking about that. There's still many doctors in the country who think chelation specifically, once again we're talking about, is not worthwhile. We know that we have to be careful of the promises you make on chelation. We know that if you start talking about it's going to cure this and that, you're running into danger zones. But as long as you are talking about certain removal of heavy metals from the system, we know that chelation is FDA approved. I mean, we know that calcium EDTA is FDA approved for removal of certain materials from the body. We also know as doctors and I as a lawyer, I won't go through a whole lecture on this, that we know that you as a doctor have the right to prescribe an FDA approved drug off label for what you think is in the best interest of you and the patient,